I think MicroStrategy hits $1 trillion in 2025. I think at $1 trillion, we see like a mean reversion, and it could happen quick. This is one of the really interesting parts in my perspective is, but my goal for 2025 personally is to acquire as many MicroStrategy shares as humanly possible. I am irresponsibly long. I'm very long on this trade, and I personally don't want to pay that much attention to it where I'm freaking out on the taking a short position and I'm wrong and it totally flips and goes the other way and I lose my shares that I've like worked so hard for. So that's kind of I guess my base view on like establishing and creating a position, and because I don't want to sell these shares ever. Like these MicroStrategy shares that I've got, I'm planning on holding forever. And I guess I could be in a situation where, you know, let's say you yield some cash, like when you hit an implied volatility peak, either, you know, porting that over into Bitcoin or using it to facilitate my life or, you know, whatever that may look like or whatever that is. And that kind of general structure exists. I mean, people do this all the time. People do this all the time in on other equities like Tesla. This is a very common infrastructure that people deployed for Tesla. You know, anybody that's been a Tesla bull since 2013 and they're holding on to a shitload of shares, they're okay putting some shares at risk on a covered call strategy if they get called away because they've got so many because they've been holding since 2013 and they've caught the whole run up from, you know, 10 billion up to, I don't know, $1.5 trillion.
It makes me think, you know, it sounds like you're living a bit on a MicroStrategy standard. I heard this from Josh. It's great.
Yeah.
I wonder if you guys, long-term, not so much Josh, I wonder, long-term, do you think it's better if MicroStrategy would just let the price accumulate or accrete and never do splits as long-term hodlers, you know, and kind of be like more like a Berkshire Hathaway or kind of like keep dividing, splitting, and get more vol, I guess you're thinking. And I guess that helps with the Bitcoin yield. And how are you managing sort of the risks, which you alluded to there, and really the tax implications? What are you thinking about the taxes?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot there. Yeah, I guess I would say I'm living on a MicroStrategy standard and a Bitcoin standard, really.
It's like they're layered on. It's like layer 1, layer 2. Especially if you look at, I mean, I just did a show with CJ Constantinos, and, you know, you could look at the dollar as a layer 2 and all these markets as a way to spread Bitcoin. MicroStrategy is a way to spread Bitcoin. It's, you know, I was making fun of the Standard & Poor's earlier, but MicroStrategy, you know, fixes the Standard & Poor's, and it's Bitcoin fixing MicroStrategy in a way. And I think Michael Saylor is the greatest financial magician who's probably ever lived and creating the greatest security we've ever seen. But it's built on Bitcoin. And I don't think a security like this could exist without, you know, an asset like Bitcoin underneath it. So how are you managing the taxes here, and sort of what are you thinking about?
Yeah. Oh my God, taxes are a freaking nightmare. But you know, having to consider taxes means you had a gain. And that's been some of the best advice I've gotten from some people is like the fact that you get to consider taxes means that you had a gain. So you should be happy about that. But I mean, managing taxes have been the biggest variable of my entire calculus. Is like, oh my God. Okay. So like with options, for example, if you hold options for longer than a year, you can take long-term capital gains if you sell an options contract that you hold for longer than a year. So you get a tax benefit from holding there. Now, alternatively, there's no taxable event if you exercise those trades. So that's where, you know, I've been exercising contracts that I've held since 22 and 23 pretty religiously, and it restarts the clock on capital gains taxes. However, my shares, there's no taxable event that occurs, and my cost basis now moves to whatever my strike was for that option. So the way I look at the taxes is if I hold my shares and I never sell them, but I start to use them as collateral, I can have more tax efficient ways of, managing and financing my life. And this is the classic buy, borrow, die strategy that, most, wealthy people adopt this strategy. They hold on to their assets and they hold them in different portfolios, real estate, equity, all these things. And then they get loans from large financial institutions to finance their life. And these loans, interesting thing about these loans, they're generally like, 5 to 7 to 10% interest, which if your capital gains taxes are 15% or 20%, it's more efficient to take out a loan on your portfolio and have like dividends pay your interest on your loan than it is to sell your portfolio and pay capital gains taxes. So this is like wealthy people 101, the buy, borrow, die strategy. And I think that's what is really appealing to me about Bitcoin and the development of Bitcoin over the next decade is we're going to see a massive development in the economic infrastructure for usage of collateral. And, for me, MicroStrategy is just an easier way. Like the traditional infrastructure for using MicroStrategy as collateral exists today, but it doesn't. It's in its infancy for Bitcoin, and as financial infrastructure is built out over the next decade, like there's going to be more use cases for all of these different products.
Yeah, for sure. Could MicroStrategy hit 100,000 per share?
100,000 per share seems pretty insane.
Unadjusted here.
Unadjusted
from here.
From here. That seems pretty insane. That would be like a, $30 trillion market cap. The interesting part with MicroStrategy is you've got, again, this like ETF pressure that's just continuously on the bid, and it's going to be continuously on the bid for perpetuity. Like I don't foresee the equity market changing rapidly enough for ETFs to become less important and ingrained in financial ecosystems in a fast horizon. So ETFs are going to be on the bid for a long time, and everybody has incentive to buy MicroStrategy and hold MicroStrategy in the ETF. So I don't think there's going to be a situation where all of the ETFs drop MicroStrategy either. So you've got this ETF pressure, you've got this like long-term Bitcoiner holder perspective, and you've got diamond hands, and those people are the most hardened holders of all time. And now you give them this tool of earning a yield on their like Bitcoin holding proxy via a covered call strategy, and people are like, oh shit, this is interesting, and it makes them want to hold even harder, right? Because the utility value of holding your equity is just increased, and now it's just like the game theory gets nuts quick, where you think about like what's actually trading at the margin. We see this huge daily traded volume, right? It's the top 10 publicly traded equity. However, like who's actually selling who's actually trading hands right now? Like how much of the equity that's trading at the margin, which I think is razor thin, and which is why it's so volatile, how much of it is actually trading hands to like new buyers and new holders and new sellers? And I think it's a very small portion of the market. Whereas like most of the market is just like all of this insanity that's happening in the options derivatives market, but the actual number of traders or the stock that's trading hands to the buyers that are going to hold for the future is like a very, very small number. So yeah, I mean, it's totally fascinating. I think we hit $1 trillion. I think MicroStrategy hits $1 trillion in 2025. At $1 trillion, the number of bears and FUD that we're going to see in the market is going to be unbearable. It's going to be totally ridiculous. And I think at $1 trillion, we see like a mean reversion, and it could happen quick.